The war was over before it had truly begun. The HFY, an alien race of ruthless conquerors, had descended upon Earth like a storm, their superior technology and overwhelming numbers cutting down humanity's defenses with brutal efficiency. Earth's cities, once symbols of human achievement, now lay in ruins. Skyscrapers crumbled, neighborhoods burned, and the once bustling capitals were silent, reduced to ash and twisted metal. It had been a swift invasion. The first wave of HFY warships appeared in orbit without warning, devastating Earth's satellites and defense systems. The human military, though courageous, had been ill-prepared for such a formidable enemy. Within weeks, the HFY had wiped out most of the world's armed forces, and their forces spread like a plague across the planet. The survivors, battered and broken, were forced into submission. Humanity, the proud species that had once roamed the stars, was now enslaved on its own homeworld. The HFY enslaved entire populations, using humans as labor for their cruel empire. The few remaining free humans had either been pushed into hiding or were scavenging in the rubble of their former cities, unsure how to fight back against such a merciless foe. But amidst the chaos and despair, there was one man who refused to give up: Captain Elias Ward. A decorated war hero from the early days of the invasion, Ward had been one of the first to witness the HFY's overwhelming power. His unit had fought valiantly at the start, but their numbers had been decimated, and soon the world fell under the shadow of the invaders. Ward himself had barely escaped with his life when his last outpost was overrun. Now, in the quiet aftermath, he found himself among a small, scattered group of survivors, soldiers, engineers, and scientists, people who had all witnessed the same horrors but had yet to lose hope. In a world where the HFY controlled nearly every city, Ward and his team made their base deep within a forgotten bunker, hidden beneath the ruins of what had once been a thriving military complex. The world outside was dark and silent, the echo of humanity's defeat ringing through the air like a death knell. But inside this forgotten shelter, there was something different. There was life. These survivors weren't just waiting to die. They were planning. Ward wasn't foolish enough to believe they could win a direct confrontation with the HFY. The odds were too steep. The alien invaders had weapons that could obliterate entire cities in the blink of an eye. But Ward had something they didn't: ingenuity. Humanity had always thrived on its ability to adapt, to find solutions where none existed. It was their greatest strength. He stood in the center of the makeshift command center, surrounded by a dozen grim-faced individuals. Engineers were hunched over old maps, tracing routes through territories they knew to be heavily patrolled by the HFY. Scientists were poring over ancient human technology, hoping to find a breakthrough, some hidden piece of information that could change the tide. And soldiers were standing by, ready for whatever action they might be called upon to take. Ward addressed them quietly, his voice calm yet filled with the determination of a man who had seen the worst of humanity's struggles and had refused to let it break him. "We're not done," he said simply. "We might not have the power to take them head-on, but we can disrupt their control. We can show the galaxy that humanity still has a fight left in us." The others nodded. It was a thin thread of hope, but it was something. In a world where everything had been lost, it was the only thing left to hold on to. Captain Ward's eyes hardened with resolve. "We're going to hit them where it hurts. We'll sabotage their supply lines, cripple their communication systems, and most importantly, we'll send a message. Humanity isn't finished. Not yet." And so, from the ashes of defeat, a spark of resistance was born. The fight for Earth and for humanity's survival had only just begun. Though the galaxy might have written them off, humanity would rise again. This time, they'd fight smarter. This time, they'd fight together. The days after the invasion were long and brutal. The HFY had quickly solidified their control over Earth, establishing oppressive checkpoints in every major city. Entire regions were quarantined, their populations segregated, and the remnants of human military forces were either imprisoned or executed on sight. The once thriving world now felt like a ghost planet, suffocated by the invaders' presence. The survivors, scattered across what remained of Earth, lived in constant fear. The Stalroth were not a race known for mercy. They imposed their brutal rule with the efficiency of a machine, enforcing their laws through fear and violence. Their towering insect-like forms loomed over human captives, each step a reminder of the futility of resistance. With advanced technology far beyond human understanding, they turned cities into labor camps, stripping away every trace of humanity's past achievements. The Alroth's empire expanded like a dark cloud across Earth, and with each passing day, the hope of a human resurgence seemed more distant. Captain Elias Ward had seen this firsthand. He had witnessed entire cities fall, one by one. His own family was lost in the early days of the invasion, and that loss had hardened him. But as much as the death and destruction weighed on his soul, it was the silence of the people that hurt the most. Earth's survivors, once proud and resilient, had been reduced to hushed whispers and fearful eyes. The will to fight had been extinguished in most. Humanity had been broken, and with it the hope of ever reclaiming their world. Yet, in the shadow of this despair, Ward and his small team of rebels continued to work in secret. Their base, buried deep beneath the rubble of a once great military facility, was all they had left. Here, they plotted and planned, though their resources were dwindling, and their numbers dwindled with each passing day. They were outmatched in every sense of the word, and the Alroth knew it. Their ships patrolled the skies, their enforcers scoured the land, and no one was safe. But within this darkness, a flicker of hope remained. Ward's team had found something, a glimmer of technology that could change everything. Deep within the remains of a military complex, they had uncovered a relic, something no one had dared to hope for. It was an ancient artificial intelligence, one from a time before the war. Buried and forgotten, it had remained dormant for years, hidden beneath layers of rubble and classified archives. The AI had once been part of humanity's defense systems, but its knowledge and capabilities had been left untouched for decades. Ward had always believed that humanity's ingenuity was their greatest weapon, even when all seemed lost. The AI, though archaic, still held vast stores of knowledge, human secrets, and technological blueprints that could give them a fighting chance. It was their first real hope in months. It was the thing that could potentially turn the tide. "We need to wake it up," Ward said, his voice filled with urgency as he gathered his team around the A's dormant core. "This could be our one shot at figuring out how to fight back." The engineers worked tirelessly, using whatever tools they had left to bring the ancient machine online. The air around them was thick with tension. The Stalroth might be closing in, but if they could harness the power of this AI, humanity might just have a chance. Hours passed, and then, at last, the screen flickered to life. The AI's interface came alive, its lights blinking as it processed its surroundings. The hum of its circuits was a welcome sound, a sign of life in a world that had become devoid of it. It was a small victory in a time of constant defeat. For the first time in months, there was a sense of direction, a glimmer of purpose. The AI's presence, though a small victory in itself, reminded them all that they hadn't been entirely defeated. There was still something humanity could fight for. There was still something left to lose. Ward stood in front of the screen, his face set with determination. "We're not done. Not yet. This is just the beginning." As the AI began to process data, revealing long-forgotten schematics and defensive strategies, the resistance found itself on the edge of something greater than survival. They had a chance now, no matter how slim, but they would need to move quickly. The Stalroth were relentless, and they would soon learn that humanity was not as helpless as they had believed. The AI's activation was the first real hope humanity had clung to in months. As it powered up, it felt like a distant dream was finally becoming a reality. The glowing interface of the ancient machine flickered and hummed, slowly revealing itself piece by piece. The information it held, once thought lost forever, could be the key to humanity's resurgence. The AI's knowledge of old Earth military strategies, forgotten technologies, and critical weaknesses in the Xalroth's hold over the planet was more than Ward could have hoped for. But there was no time to waste. Every moment counted. Ward stood over the console, eyes scanning the streams of data as they flashed across the screen. A sense of urgency ran through him. The Xalroth would not remain unaware for long, and the last thing they needed was to draw attention before they were ready. The AI's knowledge could be their weapon, but they needed resources, ships, weapons, people. They were far from prepared for a full-scale confrontation, but it was their only chance. Without this, humanity's resistance would crumble under the weight of the Xalroth's might. "Start gathering whatever parts we have left," Ward ordered his team. "We'll need to rebuild the fleet if we're going to have a fighting chance." The engineers and tech specialists quickly set to work, gathering scraps from the ruins of destroyed human military bases, scavenging anything that could be repurposed. They scoured the remnants of old weapons and vessels, hoping to find components that would help them rebuild some semblance of the might Earth once possessed. It was a daunting task. Parts were scattered, and the AI's instructions were vague, given its long period of dormancy. But they had no other option. Meanwhile, the rest of the resistance began to grow. As news spread through the survivors, through whispered messages and coded transmissions, more and more people began to rally towards cause. Former soldiers, engineers, and civilians who had hidden away in the shadows of a broken world began to rise, answering the call to arms. Ward had sparked a fire, and now it was spreading like wildfire. The galaxy had watched in silence as humanity fell, but the resistance wasn't just about surviving. It was about showing the universe that humanity had a resilience no other species could match. The Xalroth had underestimated them, and now humanity was prepared to show them just how wrong they were. But with the swelling numbers came new dangers. Ward knew it was only a matter of time before the Xalroth took notice of the human resistance. Their forces were scattered and under-equipped, and their only hope lay in striking quickly, while the enemy's attention was still elsewhere. They could not afford to be caught in the open, not yet. As the days passed, the ragtag group of rebels worked tirelessly, using every scrap of their ingenuity to create something that could stand against the Xalroth. The AI offered them knowledge, but humanity had to do the rest. And they did, slowly. Piece by piece, they began to rebuild. Makeshift warships were assembled from remnants of human spacecraft, reinforced with whatever technology they could salvage. Weapons, once thought outdated and obsolete, were repurposed into tools of resistance. Ward paced through the base, his mind never still, constantly analyzing the next move. The work was grueling, but every small breakthrough felt like a victory. They had a plan now. They weren't just surviving, they were fighting back. The first real test came when the Xalroth sent a small patrol to scour the region, hunting for signs of rebellion. The humans had been preparing for this moment, knowing the Xalroth would soon catch on to their presence. The patrol was caught off guard, their communications scrambled by the AI's interference, and the humans launched a surprise attack. It wasn't a large-scale battle, but it was a victory. An important one. For the first time since the invasion, the humans had struck back. They'd crippled the patrol's communications and supplies, forcing the Xalroth to retreat. It was a victory, but a small one. Ward knew the battle was far from over. The Xalroth would retaliate, and their retaliation would be swift and brutal. But for the first time in a long while, Ward allowed himself to feel something he hadn't dared to in months: hope. This was just the beginning. The spark of resistance had ignited, and it was spreading fast. Humanity wasn't going to roll over and die. They were going to fight. The Xalroth had underestimated them once, but they wouldn't make the same mistake again. And this time, humanity would make them regret it. The small victory over the Xalroth patrol was more than just a tactical win. It was a symbol. It proved to the scattered human resistance that they weren't entirely powerless. For the first time since the invasion, Ward saw the glimmer of something far greater than just survival. He saw the possibility of victory. But to make that victory a reality, The fight couldn't be waged alone. The Exalroth were too powerful, too vast in their reach. Humanity would need allies, forces that had been hidden in the shadows of the galaxy, oppressed by the same invaders. Ward's first move was to contact the factions that had suffered under the Exalroth, hoping to unite those who had nothing left to lose. Earth had once been part of a larger interstellar alliance, a group of species that spanned the stars, bound together by mutual goals and a shared sense of cooperation. But the Exalroth's reign had torn that alliance apart. Many of Earth's old allies had either been crushed or subjugated. Others had retreated into isolation, too fearful or broken to make a stand. Ward knew that reaching out was risky. The Exalroth were monitoring communications, hunting down signs of rebellion across the galaxy. But he had no choice. The human resistance was too small, too weak to stand alone. They needed the strength of other worlds. They needed a united front. Through a series of encrypted transmissions, Ward reached out to the Draxi, a proud reptilian species known for their strength and strategic minds. They had been among the first to feel the Exalroth's wrath, their homeworld destroyed in the opening stages of the invasion. Ward's message, though short and guarded, was clear: we fight together or we fall apart. Days passed with no response. The silence was deafening, and Ward began to lose hope. Had the Draxi given up? Had they abandoned the fight altogether? But just as despair started to take root, the reply came through, a single word encrypted in their complex language, but unmistakable in its meaning: ready. The Draxi were on board. Ward could hardly believe it. His next step was even more ambitious: to reach out to the Xenar, an insectoid species known for their expertise in engineering and technology. Though their culture was vastly different from humanity's, they shared a deep resentment toward the Exalroth for enslaving their people, and their technological prowess could provide a crucial edge. The Xenar's response came faster than Ward expected, and their terms were clear. Give us a chance to rebuild our fleets, and we'll provide the firepower you need to take on the Exalroth. It was a fair deal. Both sides knew that cooperation meant survival, not just for them, but for the future of the galaxy. The final breakthrough came when the Solari, a species of agile, highly intelligent beings from a planet shrouded in mist, agreed to join the cause. They had always been isolationists, unwilling to engage in galactic politics. But their cities had fallen to the Exalroth, their culture nearly wiped out. When Ward's message reached them, they saw a chance not only to survive, but to reclaim their future. The Solari brought with them their knowledge of stealth and infiltration, skills that would prove invaluable in the coming battles. Now humanity wasn't alone. Ward had done the impossible. He had formed an alliance with the most unlikely of partners. The galaxy had never seen such a diverse coalition: reptilians, insectoids, and humans, with each race bringing its unique strengths to the table. It was a fragile alliance, no doubt, but in the face of the Exalroth, it was their best hope. As the various fleets began to regroup and coordinate, Ward stood at the heart of the human base, watching as ships were repaired and weapons were forged. The resistance was growing, its ranks swelling with every new ally. Each victory, no matter how small, was a testament to the power of unity. Humanity had once been isolated, but now they were the spark that would ignite the galaxy. Still, time was running out. The Exalroth were too vast, their control over the galaxy too strong. Ward knew the alliance was fragile, and any misstep could lead to disaster. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ward allowed himself a moment of hope. This was more than just a rebellion. This was a revolution, a fight for freedom that spanned the stars. We have a chance, Ward whispered to himself, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Now we take it. The alliance was forged, but the true test was yet to come. Captain Elias Ward and his newfound coalition stood on the precipice of something monumental. Together with the Draxi, Xenar, and Solari, they had a fighting chance, an opportunity to reclaim their world from the Exalroth and ignite a rebellion that could spread across the galaxy. but they were up against a ruthless enemy who had wiped out entire civilizations. The Exalroth would not relinquish their hold on Earth easily. The first major strike came sooner than expected. The Exalroth had become aware of the growing resistance. They had underestimated the strength of humanity's resolve and the resolve of their allies, but their response would be swift and brutal. Their warships, sleek and menacing, gathered in orbit around Earth, preparing for a full-scale assault. The Exalroth were ready to crush this fragile alliance before it could grow into something truly dangerous. Ward's new fleet, though bolstered by the combined strength of the Draxi and Sinar, was still outnumbered and outgunned. Yet there was one thing they had that the Exalroth didn't: determination. Humanity was willing to fight for everything they had lost, for their families, their homes, their future. And now their allies were fighting for the same thing. Ward stood on the bridge of the laid human warship, staring at the vast expanse of space, a battlefield stretching before them. The time for planning had ended. The alliance was ready to strike. "We've trained for this," Ward said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "Our enemy is large, and they're powerful, but they think we're weak. They think we'll crumble. Let's show them just how wrong they are." As the fleet moved into position, Ward's heart raced. It was a delicate balance. They couldn't afford to let the Exalroth get the upper hand, and they couldn't risk the entire fleet being destroyed in a single strike. Every move, every decision would be critical. The first shots were fired when the Exalroth advanced, their ships unleashing waves of energy blasts. The battle was fierce, chaotic, and brutal. The human and alien forces fought with everything they had, using the element of surprise to their advantage. The Zinner's stealth capabilities allowed them to slip through the shadows, launching precise attacks on Exalroth's supply lines. The Draxi's raw power and strength crushed enemy forces in direct combat, while the Solari used their agility and precision to infiltrate the enemy's ranks, disabling key systems. The battle waged for hours, and the once proud Exalroth fleet began to show signs of strain. Their arrogance had blinded them to the strength of this unexpected coalition. But the Exalroth were nothing if not ruthless. They adapted quickly, and soon the tide of battle began to shift in their favor. Their warships reformed, flanking the Alliance's fleet and outmatching their weapons with superior firepower. Ward's warship was hit, a massive blast tearing through the outer hull, sending sparks and debris flying. The lights flickered, and the crew scrambled to keep the ship afloat. In the midst of the chaos, Ward's mind raced. They had to turn the tide. They had to push back the Exalroth, or all would be lost. "Focus fire on their flagship," Ward ordered, his voice sharp and unwavering. "That's where their command is. If we can take that down, we'll disrupt their coordination." The human fleet's ships and their allies turned toward the massive Exalroth flagship, its sheer size and firepower enough to intimidate anyone who dared to face it. But the resistance was undeterred. The combined firepower of the coalition unleashed a barrage of missiles, plasma, and laser fire, all aimed at the heart of the Exalroth command. The Exalroth flagship retaliated, its weapons unleashing a terrifying torrent of energy. But the resistance fought with a ferocity born from desperation. Finally, with a deafening explosion, the flagship took a hit. Its core exploded, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Exalroth fleet faltered, their lines disorganized as panic set in. The Alliance pressed the advantage, taking down smaller ships and dismantling their tactical formations. It wasn't a total victory. There were casualties on both sides, but the Exalroth had suffered a serious blow. They were not invincible. For the first time since the invasion, the resistance had landed a significant strike. The Exalroth were forced to retreat, their once dominant fleet scattering in disarray. The victory sent shockwaves across the galaxy, signaling that humanity was no longer the helpless species they had once been. As the battle wound down and the remaining Exalroth ships retreated, Ward stood at the command center of his ship, his hands gripping the console. The Alliance had won this round, but the war was far from over. He knew this was only the beginning, that there would be more battles to fight. But one thing was certain. The resistance had proven that they could stand against the Exalroth, and that alone was a victory worth celebrating. "This is just the start," Ward said, his voice filled with resolve. "We've got their attention now, and we're not backing down." The victory at Earth was a decisive moment in the fight for humanity's future, but it was only one battle in an ongoing war. The Exalroth, though shaken, were not defeated. Their retreat was a tactical move, a step back to regroup and reassess their strategy. Ward knew that they had only won a temporary reprieve, and now the true test awaited. The Exalroth would come again, stronger and more prepared. But Ward also understood that humanity's newfound allies, Draxi, Zinar, and Solari, couldn't afford to waste this opportunity. The Exalroth's hold over the galaxy was deep, their empire vast, and the key to defeating them lay in striking at their heart. The Exalroth's homeworld, a fortress world nestled deep within their territory. The plan was audacious. No one had dared to strike at the Exalroth homeworld in over a century. Their defenses were beyond anything humanity had faced before, and the chances of success were slim. But Ward couldn't shake the thought that this was their one shot. The Exalroth had underestimated them once, and now they had to prove that this galaxy wasn't theirs to conquer. The Alliance's fleets had already begun to gather in secret, far from prying eyes. The Zinar, with their engineering brilliance, had been working tirelessly to modify human and alien ships for long-range deep space travel. The Draxi had organized elite strike teams, preparing for ground warfare, while the Solari perfected their infiltration tactics to breach the Exalroth defenses from within. Ward had a plan, but it would take every ounce of their combined strength to pull it off. Before the final assault could take place, Ward gathered his top commanders for one last strategy meeting. He had been in the field, fighting alongside his people, but this mission was something different. It would require not just brute strength, but cunning and precision. "We strike at the heart of the Exalroth," Ward began, pacing in front of a holographic map of the galaxy. The map zoomed in on the heavily fortified system at the center of the Exalroth Empire, the very world where their rulers dwelled. The planet, known as Exalroth Prime, was surrounded by layers of defense, an impenetrable network of ships, orbital cannons, and planetary shields. The Resistance commanders, now unified under Ward's leadership, exchanged tense looks. No one spoke. The plan was risky, far too risky. But Ward didn't give them the chance to voice their doubts. He knew what was at stake. Earth's survival depended on this. The galaxy's survival depended on this. "We'll infiltrate the planet first. The Solari will lead the ground teams, disrupting their defenses. Meanwhile, the rest of us will launch a multi-pronged assault, airstrikes, orbital bombardment, and a direct assault on their command center. We'll cut the head off the snake." The Draxi general, a towering figure covered in armored scales, raised his hand. "You're asking us to hit their core systems, Elias. If we fail, they'll retaliate with everything they have. We're talking about a galactic war." Ward nodded. "I know the stakes, but if we succeed, we cripple them. Take out their leadership, disable their military command. Without them, they'll fall apart. This is our only chance to end this war." The room fell silent. The weight of the decision hung in the air. Every commander knew that failure wasn't an option. Earth would be lost forever if they didn't succeed, and the Exalroth would continue their conquest across the stars. But the risk was unimaginable. Finally, the Draxi general spoke. "If we do this, we do it together. For the galaxy." The Zinar tech leader, always calculating, added, "We've already modified our ships with the latest stealth technology. We'll be able to slip past their outer defenses. But we'll need your best fighters, Ward. The Exalroth will retaliate immediately. Our chances will be slim if you don't hit them hard and fast." Ward's gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of each commander. There was no going back. It was do or die. "We'll give them everything we've got," Ward said, his voice unwavering. We'll show them that humanity isn't just a blip on their radar. We're a force to be reckoned with. The preparations began in earnest. Ships were retrofitted for the journey, stealth technologies activated, and attack plans finalized. The Alliance knew that the outcome of this mission would determine the future of the galaxy. No one had ever attempted something so bold. They were about to launch an attack on the very heart of the Exalroth Empire, and if they succeeded, it would send a shockwave through the entire galaxy. As the fleets assembled and their final checks were completed, Ward stood before his ship, the Phoenix, ready to lead them into the heart of enemy territory. This was humanity's moment, not just to fight for survival, but to show the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit. "That ends now," he whispered to himself as the ships powered up, preparing for the greatest battle of their lives. The journey to Exalroth Prime was a perilous one, even for a fleet as diverse and determined as Ward's. The Alliance moved in secret, weaving through asteroid fields, using the galaxy's natural barriers to mask their presence. Every fleet member knew that this was their most dangerous mission yet. The Exalroth would be prepared for any assault on their homeworld, and if they detected even a single fleet in their path, all would be lost. As the fleet advanced, Ward's mind raced. This wasn't just a battle of firepower, it was a battle of wills. The Exalroth had underestimated humanity once before, and now they would learn that it wasn't just Earth they were dealing with. It was an entire coalition of species united in a cause greater than themselves. They were fighting not only for survival, but for the future of the galaxy. The final approach was tense. The ships moved at full stealth, evading any early detection from the enemy's watchful eyes. Ward sat at the helm of his ship, Phoenix, his hands firmly gripping the controls. The Draxi had prepared ground teams, the Xenar had fortified their ships with cutting-edge technology, and the Solari were ready to infiltrate the planet's surface, aiming to strike directly at the Exalroth's leadership. Hours seemed to stretch on endlessly as the fleet inched closer to their target. The silence was broken only by the occasional transmission from various fleet commanders, confirming their readiness. Despite the massive pressure, Ward maintained his focus. He had seen the horrors of war, had lost so much to the Exalroth, but there was no room for fear now. Only resolve. They would either succeed in crippling the Exalroth, or they would fall in their attempt. There was no other option. Then, as they approached the outskirts of Exalroth Prime's planetary defenses, the first tremor of alarm hit. The fleet's advanced stealth technology had carried them this far, but the Exalroth were not easily fooled. Their detection systems were sophisticated, and even the best technology couldn't remain undetected forever. A warning signal flashed across Ward's console. "They found us," a voice crackled through his comm. It was from the lead Xenar ship. Initiating evasive maneuvers. Ward's heart pounded. "Stay on course," he ordered. "We'll hit them before they can organize." Without hesitation, the battle erupted. The Exalroth warships, vast and menacing, broke from their formations, opening fire. Brilliant beams of plasma and streaks of missiles shot across the void of space. Ward's fleet, though smaller, responded with precision and speed. Ships darted in and out of the enemy fire, returning blasts with calculated firepower. The Alliance's stealth advantage was gone, but their strategy was still intact. Strike hard, strike fast. As Phoenix weaved through the chaos, Ward could see the Exalroth flagship in the distance, its massive silhouette looming against the backdrop of a dying star. That was the prize. If they could neutralize it, they would disrupt the entire Exalroth war machine. But just as they were preparing to target the flagship, a colossal burst of energy erupted from the Exalroth command ship, sending shockwaves through space. Several of the human and allied ships were thrown off course, their shields barely holding as they struggled to regain control. Ward clenched his teeth, knowing that they had to push through. "All ships, focus fire on their command vessel. We take them down now." His voice rang out over the comms, and the fleet responded, pouring every last ounce of firepower into the flagship. The Draxi fighters led the charge, their ships zipping in and out, avoiding enemy fire as they unleashed barrages of missiles. The Xenar, with their unmatched technological expertise, locked onto the flagship's weak points and fired concentrated blasts of energy, causing sections of the massive ship to shudder and flare. On the ground, the Solari had already infiltrated the Salroth Prime's atmosphere, slipping past anti-air defenses to land on the surface undetected. Their mission was clear: reach the heart of Salroth leadership, the Central Command, and strike swiftly before the Salroth had time to regroup. The battle escalated. The Salroth flagship was now surrounded by the combined might of the Alliance's fleet, but their forces were not easily overwhelmed. Their retaliation was fierce. Salroth warships surged forward, their dark forms like shadows in the chaos. The planet's defensive cannons fired, targeting the ships that drew too close. "We're not out of this yet," Ward muttered, his eyes never leaving the viewscreen. The Phoenix shook violently as a blast from a nearby Salroth destroyer hit its shields. Ward braced himself, but his focus never wavered. He knew they were close. They could break through, but it would require everything they had. The Xenar ships were already making their way into the inner layers of the Salroth defense grid, preparing to disable the planetary shields. Once those were down, the Silari teams would have their chance. Everything hinged on timing, and Ward knew that no matter how hard they fought, the final battle would be one of wills. Humanity and its allies united against a ruthless enemy who would stop at nothing to protect their reign. The outcome would decide the fate of Earth, the galaxy, and every species that had ever dreamed of freedom. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future. The final moments of the battle felt like an eternity. The clash between the Alliance's fleet and the Salroth warships had escalated into a maelstrom of violence and chaos. Ships collided, explosions rippled across the void, and the very fabric of space seemed to tremble under the weight of the conflict. The fleet was battered, their shields flickering dangerously, but their resolve was unwavering. Humanity's greatest fight was unfolding in real time, and every passing second was a testament to their defiance. On the ground, the Solari infiltrators were making their way toward the Salroth Central Command. They moved like shadows, silent and swift, bypassing the enemy's defenses with ease. Their mission was clear: disable the Salroth leadership, crush their Central Command, and ensure that the Salroth could never rally. This was the heart of the enemy's empire, and if they could sever it, the rest would follow. As Ward's Phoenix maneuvered through the tumult of the space battle, his eyes fixed on the distant Salroth flagship, now battered and leaking energy. They had inflicted considerable damage, but it was still fighting back fiercely. Time was running out. If the Salroth managed to regroup, the entire alliance would be crushed under the weight of their retaliatory strike. "Captain, we've lost 3 more ships," his communications officer reported. "The enemy's reinforcements are incoming. We need to push through now." Ward didn't flinch. His fingers danced over the controls, issuing orders with swift precision. The battle had reached its peak, and now there was only one way to finish it: an all-out assault on the flagship's weak point. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. Failure was no longer an option. This was the final stand. "Focus everything on their command center," he ordered. "Every gun, every missile. Now." The fleet responded with an intensity that seemed to shake the very stars around them. The Draxi fighters closed in, unleashing wave after wave of concentrated fire, targeting the weak spots in the Salroth flagship's shields. The Xenar ships followed, releasing a deadly barrage of energy blasts that disintegrated the enemy's outer defenses. The Salroth flagship was staggering, its massive form listing, but it still had teeth. Its retaliatory fire was relentless, streaking across the space around them, but the Alliance held firm. As the final shots were fired, Ward felt the shockwave of the explosion ripple through the Phoenix. The flagship's shields finally collapsed under the assault, and with one final overwhelming barrage, the Axalroth flagship exploded in a blinding burst of light. The explosion sent shockwaves through the battlefield, sending several Talroth warships spiraling out of control. The heart of their empire had been torn out. "We did it," Ward whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He stared at the wreckage of the flagship, watching as it disintegrated into space debris. But there was no time to celebrate, not yet. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Axalroth had lost their command center, their leadership in disarray. Without their central control, their forces scattered, losing the coordination that had once made them unstoppable. "Prepare for the final push," Ward said, his voice filled with determination. "We finish this now." On the surface of Axalroth Prime, the Silari teams were already deep within the enemy's citadel. Their stealth and precision had allowed them to infiltrate the highest levels of the planet's defenses. They had reached the Central Command, an enormous, heavily fortified structure where the Axalroth's leadership had been holed up, strategizing their next move. As the Silari planted their charges, the entire command center detonated in a massive explosion, sending a shockwave across the planet. It was a symbolic blow, destroying the very nerve center of the Axalroth Empire. The Axalroth's reign was crumbling. The Alliance had struck a fatal blow. Back in space, the Axalroth warships were in disarray. Their fleet was disintegrating, unable to reorganize in the wake of their leadership's collapse. The Alliance pressed forward, picking off ship after ship, dismantling the remnants of the enemy's forces. Within hours, the Axalroth had been defeated. The galaxy was no longer under their shadow. The Alliance's victory reverberated through every corner of the universe. The Axalroth, once the dominant force across the stars, had been broken. Their empire lay in ruins. Ward stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, staring out at the wreckage of the battle. The stars shone brightly, but the darkness that had once threatened to swallow them seemed to recede. The victory was hard won, but it was theirs. Earth was free. The galaxy was free. And as the Allied fleet turned toward the stars, Ward knew that humanity had proven its place among the stars. They had faced the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and they had emerged victorious. This was no longer just the tale of a single species fighting for survival. This was the story of a galaxy united, of different species standing together against a common enemy. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and humanity had earned its place at the heart of it.